What's going on in the Atlanta real estate market? What's going on with home values? Where are the best schools? Cleve has all the answers for you. Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST. Now, here's Cleve Gaddis.
You're listening to the Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST. If you need to reach us, Gaddis Partners Remax Center, you can call 770-497-0000, or you can go to GoGaddis.com. That's GOGADDIS.com. One more time, GOGADDIS.com. We're joined on the line this morning by Don Hutson, and that's Hutson, not HUDSON. Don is the CEO of U.S. Learning, a corporate training entity, and the producer of U.S. Learning's training programs. He's served clients in over 20 countries, has years of experience in speaking, management, and sales. Don's client list includes over half of the Fortune 500 companies. My client list includes at least one or two of the Fortune 500 companies. Don, I'm just doing a little comparison there. You're the author of over 14 books, or the co-author, including one called Selling Value, which I'd like to talk about a little bit with you today. Another, The 1 Minute Entrepreneur. And then The 1 Minute Negotiator. And I understand that you co-authored one with Ken Blanchard, who is the author of The 1 Minute Manager. That's fascinating to me. Don can be reached by visiting donhutson.com. That's DonHutson.com. Again, donhutson.com. DonHutson. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cleve. Real pleasure to be with you today.
Now, you hail from Memphis, Tennessee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Now, what would make you live in that area of the world when you could live in a fantastic place like Atlanta?
Well, I love Atlanta. I've been there many, many times, but I grew up in Memphis, and it's home, and I love it. I'm looking at the Mississippi River from our house right now.
Beautiful. Well, I understand that the Mississippi River is just about the same width as the Chattahoochee River, that they're both about the same. You know, the Chattahoochee River looks like a creek in most places, and the Mississippi River is something quite mighty. Don, talk to us a little bit about your book, Selling Value, and maybe some concepts that sellers and real estate agents should use to sell the value of a property instead of just trying to get the price at a level the market accepts it as the right value. In other words, I think a lot of times real estate agents and sellers leave money on the table because they don't sell value. In other words, they try to sell a house the same way Walmart sells cereal. They just put it on the shelf, and they know that the right person will come along with that desire to buy it, and they will buy it certainly at a market rate. I'd like to sell cereal like Neiman Marcus sells cereal instead of the way Walmart does, if that makes sense to you.
Well, Cleve, you're right on point, and the whole concept behind selling value, and we just launched it earlier this year, and many of the interviews that I did, the interviewers would say, Don, what is your definition of value? And I said, you know what, my definition is really totally unimportant. I think what people need to realize is the most important definition of value is your customer's definition. And for the agents listening to your show this morning, I'm going to suggest if they're working about 6 hot prospects right now, there are probably 6 different definitions of value that are in play.
Wow. So it's what the seller is looking for. So in other words, if you try to I'm going to give an example. It may be a good one, maybe a bad one. If a seller is looking to get home sold and get out of Dodge as quickly as possible, they might not really see any value in you getting the highest possible sales price for them, because that doesn't necessarily do their family any good. So I guess what you're saying is you got to understand exactly what your client is looking for, and then you need to provide that to them.
That's exactly right, Cleve, and that's all based on the idea that you've got to do a great job of discovery. So anytime you're talking to somebody about trying to do business with them, so often the temptation is for us to say, let me tell you about me, let me tell you about our company, let me tell you what we do, let me tell you how we do it, when in fact we need to be devoting that time and energy to saying, you know, I'm looking forward to telling you about what we do and how we do it, but first I'd like to ask you some questions. Is that okay? And we got to remember, the better the questions we ask, the better the answer we're going to get. And do a good job of discovery, and you'll understand what that person's wants and needs really are. Maybe the major consideration is a time parameter. They got to be in the next city they're moving to in 15 days. And there are all kinds of pressures that come with that. So it changes the dynamic of a transaction.
Sure does. You're listening to the Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST. We're joined on the phone this morning by Don Hutson, who is the author of Selling Value, also the 1 Minute Entrepreneur and the 1 Minute Negotiator. You can find Don at donhutson.com. That's DonHutson.com. One more time. That's donhutson.com. DonHutson.com. Don is saying that in selling value, you have to determine what is value to your prospect. So if you're planning to list a home in the Atlanta, Georgia market, you might want to list your home with someone who understands how to get to the heart of the value for the buyer. Because if you can find a buyer that values what it is you have to sell, then you won't have any problem with them seeing value in the product. And Don, what a simple and clear way to look at that. I love it.
Good. Well, I think it's more important than it's ever been because competition is keen out there, and we've got to do the best job we possibly can for the people we're serving.
And so, and at no time during our interview here on the radio did we talk about necessarily price. That doesn't mean that our prospects or our buyers wouldn't just see price as the only real value. But the truth is when I bought my home, I paid about and this was a long time ago, I paid about $30,000 or $40,000 more than I thought that home was worth. But my wife had stood in the driveway during our last showing and looked at the southern magnolias that were lined up along the side of the driveway, and I walked up next to her and a tear was streaming down her cheek.
You were done right there.
Well, then I knew what my value was. Let's talk a little bit about the 1 Minute Negotiator. Again, we're talking to Don Hutson, who is the author of Selling Value, which we just talked about, the 1 Minute Entrepreneur and the 1 Minute Negotiator. You can find him at donhutson.com, DonHutson.com. Talk a little bit about some of the concepts in the 1 Minute Negotiator and how they might help someone trying to sell real estate.
Okay, Cleve, the number one realization is that most people have at least some degree of a disease called negotiophobia. The fact is people do not like to negotiate. They see it as unpleasant, confrontational, and something they either don't want to engage in at all, or if they do, let's get it over with as fast as we can. So we need to be well prepared and get our head together, understand we're going into a negotiation, and not be freaked out about it. Let's be competent in that arena. So in that book, we talk about a matrix where we reveal 4 different strategies for the concept of negotiating. One is avoidance. That's the people who have the severest cases of negotiophobia.
Yeah,
negotiophobia. Then there's a combination where we're willing to give something up to get it over with. If you're ever going to give something up, be very careful. Know what you're giving up and why and what you're going to get in return. And then there's competition, and the competitive style or strategy of negotiating is the win-lose style. That's where you want to beat everybody up as much as you can for every morsel of every dollar that's out there.
Right.
And that's where most negotiations training takes place, and there's a lot more to negotiating than the win-lose.
Boy, that's
so true. Finally, the 4th one is collaborative negotiations, and that's a strategy whereby we're looking for a win-win. Let's try to keep a good relationship if we can. Let's do everything in our power to be sensitive to the needs of all parties. And let's take this thing into a pleasant arena where we can get this done in a win-win way.
Joined on the line by Don Hutson. Don is an author and a speaker who has spoken around the world. He's an expert in selling value and negotiating. We were talking a little bit in the last segment about negotiations in and around a real estate transaction. And Don, do you think it should be important for a seller or a buyer, if they're going to choose an agent, for them to understand that agent's sort of negotiation style and their negotiating ability?
Oh, I think it is. I think when someone's thinking about listing or selling, they really should do a good job of interviewing the agents they're considering and asking them some key questions. What is your negotiation style is a very good question to ask. And anything else that will help you understand how they do business. You know, there's so many people in the real estate business today, Cleve, and you and your organization do a great job. We all know the pros. There's so many of them that do a wonderful job, but there's a mass of people out there who got their license and never got any appreciable amount of training, and they really don't do the best job that could be done. So I think the it's incumbent upon the owner of property to do a good job of interviewing the agents they're considering.
Such an interesting point. In the state of Georgia, it takes about 60 hours for someone to get a real estate license. It takes 36 hours worth of continuing education every 4 years. So the truth of the matter is there are a lot of players in the real estate industry that do not understand what it takes in order to be successful and to help their buyers and sellers be successful as well. You've been listening to Don Hutson, who can be reached by visiting donhutson.com. That's DonHutson.com. Don is the author of Selling Value, also the 1 Minute Entrepreneur and the 1 Minute Negotiator. Don, thank you very much for joining us, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Cleve. Real pleasure, and best of luck to you. Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. This is Call Cleve Atlanta Real Estate Show on Talk Radio 640 WGST.